In this video, we will see concepts in React which every React developer must know to correctly write performant React code. Because even experienced React developers don't understand it well. So this video will help you to understand it better. As you can see, I have created a simple Vue.js application which displayed a form to add a to-do. As you can see, we have an input field with submit button and also a refresh button. So on every click of this refresh button, I'm changing the value of the refresh state from false to true and true to false using setRefresh function. As you might know, whenever the state in the component changes, that component will get re-rendered again to reflect that change on the UI. So when the component gets re-rendered, all the local variables declared in that component will be recreated again, including the event handlers declared in that component. Let's say I have a count variable declared with the initial value of 0. Then it will be reinitialized on every re-render of the component. And this add-to-do function will also be recreated on every re-render, which most of beginner React developers don't understand. So when we say component is re-rendered, it means all the code declared inside that component will be executed again. So all the local variables will be recreated, including all the event handlers from that component. So you should try to minimize the amount of code in each component so your application will not become slow during re-rendering. Now, let me log that value of the count variable to the console. As you can see, initial count on the page load is 0. And when I click on refresh button, it remains 0. So when the component is re-rendered because of the state change, the count is reinitialized to 0 again and again. So to avoid this issue of reinitializing on re-render, React provides useState hook to define the component state, which will be initialized only once when the first time component is mounted. So if we want to update that value of refresh state variable, we can call the setState function by passing a new value that we want to set. Let me log that value also to the console. You can see, initially refresh value is false. And when I click on refresh button, it will become true. And if I click it again, it will become false again. So using useState hook will not reinitialize the value on component re-render, but if you declare a local variable, it will be reinitialized on every re-render of the component. That's why we use state for storing any data in the component. And this add-to-do function will also be recreated on every re-render of this app component. Whenever we click on refresh button, this to-do form and to-do list components are also re-rendered again. So to see that in action, we can do profiling on our application. So first you need to install React DevTools browser extension. This extension you can install, and once done, you can open your Chrome DevTools. Click on these arrows and select Profiler option. Then click on this wheel icon and under General tab select this Highlight Updates checkbox. And under Profiler tab, select this checkbox to see why each component is re-rendered. Now, we can close this. Now, before clicking on this refresh button, we can click on this blue icon to start profiling. And I will click on the refresh button twice. So for first click, you can see entire app component is highlighted. Same is the case when clicked again. Now, we can click on this red icon to stop profiling. So these two frames indicates the two click interactions we had for the button. When we click the refresh button first time, to-do form component is re-rendered because the add-to-do prop is changed. This is the to-do list component which got re-rendered because the app component is re-rendered, and as to-do list is a child component of app component, it got re-rendered. This indicates the refresh button re-render because we clicked that button. If you see the code, this refresh button click changes the state of refresh from false to true and vice versa. And whenever component state is changed, that component will be re-rendered. So all the code present in the to-do form component will be executed again as a result of this re-render. Code from this to-do list component is also executed again, which is unnecessary because nothing is changed in this component. And re-executing component code without any reason will waste some seconds or milliseconds of time during each re-render. So when refresh button is clicked, I don't want the to-do form to be re-rendered because I'm not doing anything related to the to-do form. So we can avoid re-rendering to-do form and to-do list components when no props are changed. So this to-do list component accepts to-do's prop. So only when this prop is changed, I want to re-render this component. To achieve that, we can use React.memo function and provide the to-do list component as an argument to it. Also, make sure that you have imported the React package. Now only when this to-do's prop is changed, to-do list component will be re-rendered. Let's do the same thing for to-do form. Here we're getting add to-do function as a prop. Let's use React.memo and pass to-do form to it. Now only when add to-do prop is changed, to-do form component will be re-rendered. Now, we can click on this clear icon and let's refresh the page again. Click on this blue icon to start profiling again. I will click on refresh button twice. Then stop profiling. You can see that, this time to-do list component is not re-rendered again. As you know, the to-do list component is accepting to-do's prop. But when we click on refresh button, only refresh state is changed and to-do state is not changed, so to-do list component is not re-rendered now. But to-do form component is re-rendered again, as you can see, even though we have used React.memo function for it. If we click on second frame, you can see, for second click of refresh button also to-do form is re-rendered. And it took 1 millisecond to re-render that component. And for the first click, it has taken 4.5 milliseconds to re-render that component. But why this component is re-rendering? This is because every time the app component is re-rendered, all functions declared inside that component will be recreated again. So add to-do function will be different during each re-render, and as we're passing it as a prop to the to-do form component, the prop gets changed. So to avoid that recreation of function on every re-render, we can use useCallback hook, which remembers the function it creates. Its syntax is similar to useEffect. So we can pass an empty array as dependency. Let's clear the previous result. Start profiling again, and I will click on refresh button twice. Stop profiling. You can see now, to-do form component did not render. So using useCallback hook, we execute this function only when the dependencies mention changes. We don't have any dependency right now, but if you have mentioned count as dependency, this function will be recreated again only when count is changed, otherwise we will get the cached function back every time the component is re-rendered. So useCallback hook reuses the same function stored in the memory instead of creating it again on every re-render. So as we're using useCallback hook, the add-to-do variable will contain the same reference of the function every time component is re-rendered, and new function reference will be stored in the add-to-do variable when any of the dependencies mentioned changes. So if you're not using useCallback, add-to-do function will be recreated every time the app component is re-rendered, so to-do form component will be re-rendered as we're passing add-to-do as a prop to it. So using useCallback, we have avoided re-rendering the to-do form component. You also need to remember that whatever code you write inside the component will be executed on every re-render. So if I have a user object with name Mike and age of 30, then this object will be recreated on every re-render of the app component. If you want to verify that, you can add an useEffect hook. This useEffect will be executed every time the user dependency is changed. I will just log user change to the console. As you can see, when the page is loaded, we see user changed twice, because we're using React strict mode and version 18 of React. So in development mode, every useEffect is executed twice. So after commenting strict mode, we should see useEffect log only once. You can see it only once now. And every time I click on refresh button, user changed is displayed again in the console. Which means user variable is assigned a new object every time component is re-rendered, so we get different user reference during every re-render of app component. Now let's say we have a simple div with some text inside it. And if you want to style this div element differently, we provide a style prop which the CSS properties like color, let's say red, and background of, let's say yellow. And you can see it displayed on the UI. But writing inline style is not a good because it will be created on every re-render. So you can create a separate style object with those properties. But this does not make any difference, because on every re-render of the component, the style object is created again. So creating this separate object is exactly same as writing it inline, because it will be recreated again during every re-render. You can verify that by adding another useEffect. So we will execute this effect only when the style prop changes. And here I will log style changed. As you can see, on page load, the style changed is logged, and every time I click on refresh button, the style changed log is printed again. So every time, we're recreating a new style object. So to fix this, we can move this object outside the app component, and that object will never change even if we re-render the component. Let me remove the other console logs, so we will see it better. Now, initially we see style changed, and it will not be shown again, even if we click the refresh button again. As style object is defined outside the component, it will never change until we reinitialize it manually. So, that's it about this video. If you found this video useful, do like it and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.